Howdy, folks. Welcome back or welcome aboard. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show, our live broadcast for Thursday nights that gets put out there as a podcast for the rest of the week all around the world. It is really a cool sort of thing.
It's international.
They're international.
That's right.
We are all over it. Glad you could join us. Welcome back. Welcome aboard. If it's your first time with us, we are glad to have you. We are all over the social media as Doc Owen Show, DOCOWENSHOW. You can find our Facebook page. Best place to connect with us is probably on Twitter, which is at Doc Owen Show is the handle. Give us a follow. We're real good about following back and, spreading the word about what we do. We have a blog that we are developing is the best way of putting it. We don't blog on a daily basis. We blog on an as-needed, important, thought-based process. It is, as usual, docowenshow.com. Not hard to find. We also produce free apps for both the iPhone and the Android, which is where you can listen to the show in increments as you choose. You can listen to it live on our apps. They are absolutely free. Download from your respective store and get involved. And also on the apps, you've got access to the whole library. So, there's just not much way to not be able to find us. That's a double negative. That means it's easy to find us.
Not.
Mm-hmm. Not. Mm-hmm. So we always start the show in a traditional manner. It's going to be a little bit different tonight because Uncle Bocce is out roaming around the beaches of South Florida, I think, and having a good time getting a tan. But we've got his Uncle Bocce's brief with us. We just don't have him involved in the Hilltop studio tonight. So we will start off like we always do with Miss Surefire giving us an inspirational quote, and then I will follow that up with something to do with leadership, and we'll dive right into it. Miss Surefire, take it away.
And tonight's quote comes from a website called The Wondrous. That's www.thewondrous, WONDROUS.com.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
And tonight's quote comes from one of my favorite people I studied in my educational time there, Abraham Maslow.
Oh, yeah.
An American psychologist. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is what he's noted for. Yeah. And basically that's just satisfying and seeking human needs from the basic to the complex. As you keep going, they just seem more complex, but you get satisfied where you're at and you want more. So that motivates you to go on to the next level.
Yeah, and I think he also proposed the idea that you couldn't satisfy the higher needs until you met the basic needs.
That's true. And then you can kind of flip-flop, too, once you've gone up so far.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
But until you get, the basics of, food and shelter and the basic necessities of life, it is difficult to get to the next level.
That's right. And it motivates you to go on.
So I did remember something. Okay.
So his quote, you're too funny. His quote is, in any moment, we have two options. To step forward in growth or to step back into safety.
Yep. Fact.
Yeah, that's true.
Good job.
Thank you.
He must have been a smart guy.
I think so. Even though he got ridiculed by a lot of people.
That's usually the case.
Yep.
When you're out in front,
you're like a target.
Comes with the territory.
Yep.
I'm going to give you a leadership quote. And you are going to instantly recognize where this came from.
Uh-huh.
All right? Usually I give you the name of the author first and then the quote. I'm going to do it backwards.
Okay.
See how we do. So, for those of you playing along in the audience, just raise your hand. I'll be able to see it. If you don't know where you're going, you'll probably not wind up there. Who said that?
Is it from your favorite doctor?
It's pretty, but it's the same sort of thing.
Okay.
From a chap by the name of Forrest Gump.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't know where you're going, you'll probably not wind up there. It's a Forrest Gump. It could also be a Yogi Berra or a Dr. Zeus. So you're exactly right. All right, we're gonna depart a little bit from our usual programming tonight, but there's a method to our madness. There's always a method to our madness. Next, I'm going to tell you a little bit. Next week, we're going to have on the show a fellow by the name of John Whitehead. And Mr. Whitehead, among other things, has written a book called Battlefield America, The War on the American People. And I felt it significant enough. I like to do my homework. I usually don't talk to somebody in terms of having a conversation unless I've done my homework and at least know a little bit about where they're coming from. If they've authored a book and we want to put it in front of you, I like to make sure and read the book. So I have done that. So tonight what we're going to do is, after we've done some normal things, we're going to dive into the book, a little bit of a book review, and discuss what it's about and give you some interpretation for it. And then part 2 will be next week, and that will be the interview with the author himself. So we will all be informed as to maybe some questions that we have. So, if as you tune in tonight, then you need to be sure and tune in again next Thursday, and you can chat and maybe come up with some questions. We'll see how that goes. Or on the Facebook page too. We could figure out how to do that. But anyway, before we get started, we are gonna have Uncle Bocce's brief. Before he left, he made sure that we had the next issue in the can, as they used to say on the air, and so it won't take a whole lot to cue him up. It's probably a little easier to get him going with a tape version than it is live. So
I don't know about that.
Let's turn it over we'll do Uncle Bocce's brief, have a moment in history, and then we will be right back. As always, the enviable position of being Doc Owen Show historian falls to Uncle Bocce. So once a week we have this thing called Uncle Bocce's brief. And this week is no exception. Uncle Bocce, we left off last week talking about a fella that was a pain in the side of actually, he's a pain in the side of the British, although he was British.
That was my punchline. Yes.
Oh.
Okay, no, go.
You got what?
No, go ahead.
I wasn't reading your notes.
Nope.
Isn't that correct?
You're good. You made the analogy.
And he was a young man. And he wrote a pamphlet, a book. I'm trying to go over last week's lesson.
Okay.
That was it was about 80 pages long, and I remember he had this huge distribution number, all without Amazon. That's what impressed me the most. Of everything you had to say, those are the things that I remember.
Oh,
so who was
good.
this pain in the Brits' back?
Yeah, he was truly a pain. Yeah, besides attacks on George III, he called for the establishment of a republic. We mentioned that before.
He being Thomas Paine.
Thomas Paine.
Okay.
He called for that.
Okay.
And he was very strong about that.
Okay.
But even patriot leaders like Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, they actually condemned Paine.
Well, he was a young, brash. And yep, he scared them.
They thought he was an extremist on the issue of post-independence government. See, even they didn't get there yet.
Well,
The founders had not even gotten to the point of what the government was going to be like. So they thought he was just a rebel rouser,
which is really what frustrates me about today's youth. They're not pushing us.
Right.
If they are, they're pushing us in the wrong direction because they got mush in their heads.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. But still, common sense grew the patriot cause. It made no difference to the readers that Paine was a new arrival in America. and that the Common Sense was published anonymously. And many of the readers back then wanted to attribute it to John Adams.
You just told that's the first time you said that.
Yes, I'm sorry.
It was published anonymously?
Yeah, its first edition was
Wow.
published anonymously. So people thought this must be John Adams, but it was not. John Adams said, no, that was not me.
But didn't say who it was.
Right.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Okay. In the end, his prose was strictly common sense. First of all, why should England rule the vastness of a continent? Secondly, how can colonists expect to gain foreign support while still professing they were loyal to the British king? It made those things very difficult. And how much longer can Americans stand for the repeated abuses of the crown? Mm-hmm. All these questions had many readers to led many readers to one answer as the summer of 1776 drew near. Okay, so here's a little bit of a summary, very quickly.
So his writing, it was provocative.
It was provocative.
Yeah,
It
made him think.
Right, it made the people think.
Didn't tell him. He wasn't shaking his finger at him.
No,
he was just he was asking the right questions.
Okay,
I like.
Yeah, so his argument begins with general theoretical reflections about government and religion. And then it progresses onto specifics of the colonial situation. Now, he begins by distinguishing between government and society. And this is a very important issue, okay? Society, he said, is everything constructive and good that people join together to accomplish. Okay, I will embellish on that in a little while. Then government, on the other hand, is an institution whose sole purpose is to protect us from our own vices, has its origins in the evil of man, and is therefore a necessary evil at best. Government really is not the natural state of man. Okay?
I'm frowning about your first statement.
Which one?
Protect us from our own vices.
That's his words. Okay? I mean, that needs to be expanded on.
Okay.
But just in his words, this is how he viewed it.
Okay.
Okay? And he says that government's sole purpose is to protect life, liberty, and property.
Okay.
Where did he get those ideas from? We'll talk about that. And that a government should be judged solely on the basis of the extent to which it accomplishes this goal.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
He consider this imaginary scenario. He says, take a bunch of people, place them on an island, cut them off completely from society. What happens? In time, these people, they develop ties with one another, and that sort of kind of like, wait. It's the development of the civil society. You put people together without any outside influence. They do get along together. And eventually that leads them to make laws, which is the first steps of government.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So he says the people will be much happier if they are responsible for the creation of the laws that rule them. Ha, ha, ha. Isn't that a novel idea? Even today, that applies today. How much do we really have to influence the laws and the rules and the regulations that are placed upon the American people?
Forget about it.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So that's why this administrative state is anathema. It's not the way things are supposed to be. Implicitly, he argues that such a system of representation is also better for the American colonies.
Anathema.
That's my word. Okay.
I'm still back on anathema. My sister had anathema.
Yeah. Okay.
She had to have an air-conditioned room. Go
I
ahead.
believe it. Having expressed his disagreement with the British reign in America, Paine proceeds to launch a general attack on the British system of government. Okay? He said that the British system is too complex and rife with contradictions. The monarchy is granted way too much power, and it pretends to offer a reasonable system of checks and balances, but in fact, it does not. I mean, there's the king. What the king says, that's it.
Right.
People have no say in it.
Right.
Okay? Having dispensed with the preliminary theoretical issues, Paine sets to discuss the details of the American situation. In response to the argument that America has flourished under British rule, this is one of the arguments that they said, and therefore ought to stay under the king.
Okay.
Paine says that such an argument fails to realize America has evolved and no longer needs Britain's help
Right.
because they had advanced themselves.
Right.
Some say that Britain has protected America and therefore deserves allegiance, but Paine responds that Britain has only watched over America. Why? In order to secure its own economic well-being.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So Paine adds that most recently, instead of watching over the colonies, the British have been attacking them and are therefore undeserving of American loyalty. He says commerce can be better conducted with the rest of Europe, but only after America becomes independent. He asserts that the colonies remain attached to Britain. The same problems will still persist. Britain's not going to change. They're still going to try to tax them out of sight. So he was very, very much interested in getting them to go for complete independence. Now, I have a lot of other notes. I may actually consider this for another.
I wish you would.
Yeah,
Because we spend. That's interesting. I mean, we spend a lot of time, not just on the show, but in general, talking about the founding fathers and the people who signed the Declaration and the people who signed the Constitution and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But it sounds like this young Mr. Anonymous really got things going. He got the people thinking.
He did.
He challenged their.
Absolutely.
It's
amazing, and that's why George
I don't know
Washington.
It's an anathema or not, because I got to look that up.
That's why George Washington insisted that every member of his army, every soldier, got a copy of this and had to read it, because it was that provocative and it was used to encourage them. This is what we are fighting for.
I'm going to go write a book and put by Anonymous.
There you go.
Not to be confused with the Twitter Anonymous.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, the Internet Anonymous.
That's
people.
right.
Right.
The one with that Friday the 13th mask.
So who are you?
I am Uncle Bachi, UNCLEBACI at DocOwenShow.com. I need to hear from you. Please send me something.
Bachi, your series on pain is not.
Okay.
Good job.
That's right.
Good job.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bachi.
Thank you.
Uncle Bachi, pulling us through events and information from history. It's always delightful. I mean, you really. I hope you get a feel for his passion for what went on and his attention to detail, and trying to get some of the surrounding facts about it. I thoroughly enjoyed. I think most of our listeners do as well.
Yes, I do. I think
so. I need to forewarn you before we dive into the rest of the show, and that is normally I do the show in an upright standing position, and it's simply from an energy perspective that I do that. I pace around, I dance around, et cetera, et cetera.
I've seen you do some jumping jacks too.
That's just kind of like the way I like to do it. But tonight, because we're doing a bit of a book review, I found it more conducive to following the book and taking care of what I needed to take care of from a seated position. So, Uncle Bocce, thanks for the chair, bud. The first thing I want to talk to you about, the name of the book is Battlefield America, The War on the American People. And in a sentence or two, it is about the growing police state in America. You have heard me talk about that on several times on my own before this book came out. It has been something that is, from an observational point of view, something that bothered me. In other words, the police state is real. This book goes into it in scary detail and is very well documented. It's not just one guy's thoughts or observation. It's observations from all over the country and documented incidences that he pulls together. And this guy's name is John Whitehead. Just so you'll have some background, and if you'll recall, this is, for those of you just tuning in, this is part one of a two-part. It's kind of a preamble to the book, because next week we're going to have an interview with Mr. Whitehead, and I want you to be informed, at least to some extent, other than what we'll get into in the interview. I made sure to read the book so I'd have some legitimate questions and know where he was coming from. But Mr. Whitehead is an attorney and author who has written, debated, and practiced widely in the area of constitutional law, human rights, and popular culture. He's widely recognized as one of the nation's most vocal and involved civil liberties attorneys. Whitehead's approach to civil liberties issues has earned him numerous accolades and recognition. I'll go into those next week when I introduce him. Let's just leave it on the books to say he knows what he's talking about. and from international acclaim, others have said so. The cover of the book has a quote on it from Judge Andrew Napolitano, which you will probably recognize his name. And it says, "I challenge anyone to read this book and then try to go to sleep. I found that impossible," which I would completely agree with. Once I picked it up and dove into it, it was a page turner. Let's put it that way.
I know I saw you.
Yeah, it's a good book. It comes in several parts. I'm going to give you the titles to the parts so you'll kind of understand where that goes. The part one is the Declaration of War. 2 is the War on the American People. 3 is the American Police State. 4 is the American Surveillance State. And 5 is the resistance to all of this. The foreword to it is written by Dr. Ron Paul, former candidate for president, former congressman from the southern part of Texas. So, and what Mr. Paul did was he asked a few questions that I think are important, and it was in the foreword to the book, and it says, would the NSA be able to monitor our emails and other online activity without obtaining a warrant? Would we have to submit to the TSA's harassment every time we boarded an airplane? Would local governments use red light cameras to enrich themselves and deny us due process of law? Would we hear on an almost daily basis stories of SWAT teams terrorizing and even murdering innocent Americans via no-knock warrants? Would we watch in horror as police respond to peaceful protesters with military force? And would armed federal agents invade Amish farms because those farmers dared sell raw milk to willing consumers? In other words, and as you should know if you do not, all of those questions are about things and incidences that have happened in the very recent past. So to tell you what's going on, if you've not noticed, please pay attention. Most police forces, all major police forces in every major metropolitan area, have become outfitted exactly like a soldier in Vietnam or a soldier in Afghanistan. Or, I mean, they are ready for the worst at any moment. Understand that, and they because of things like Black Lives Matter and because of the anti-police activities that are going on, these guys are also, their mentality is such that they have to protect themselves first and at all cost. That means that every one of us, you, me, and everybody else, in any given situation, is viewed as a threat. We're not viewed as a partner. We're not viewed, it is completely turned around, certainly from what I grew up with. And I think even turned around over the last 5 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. Because what has happened is, and it's all documented in this book, you really need to read this book, Battlefield America, John Whitehead. The federal government has given local police forces all of this high-tech warfare type equipment in the form of grants and donations, et cetera, et cetera. So the feds, they get it. They may use it for a while. They may never use it, but that's where the police forces are getting it. All right, and they're being encouraged to use it. They're being trained how to use it. The federal government, the really big guys in the game, are taking advantage of the local police forces, and the police forces are buying in for one reason or another into this routine. And it has crept into local police culture. And the outrageous attacks on them only reinforces their opinion that they are right. It happened right here in San Antonio not too long ago. We had 2 police officers stop a couple of guys in just a regular traffic stop, mm-hmm. and one of them got out, guns blazing. We lost a police officer, and the other one was seriously injured. Mm-hmm. One of them died. So all that does is reinforce the police opinion that they must be armed to the hilt with what they call overpowering force at any given point in time. Okay? I sat in awe, literally I couldn't believe what I was watching on the television when the search was going on for the Boston Marathon bombers. And I'm sure everybody was caught up in the narrative of the search for the bombers. Mm-hmm. I was caught up in the fact that they shut down the city of Boston with martial law, mm-hmm. and every kindergarten in town had a SWAT team that joined the hunt for these 2 people.
Well, we even saw the movie, remember, too?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But it was
mm-hmm.
overwhelming force,
mm-hmm.
and it looked like a military invasion. Mm-hmm. And it was nothing more than multiple local police forces all joining together, mm-hmm. to try to find these 2 guys. But it was absolutely overpowering, and the whole scene to me was, I couldn't imagine that I would have allowed that I would have agreed. I would have been out on the streets. At least if I were not in the part of town where it was going on. Do you know what I'm saying? They shut the entire city down.
That's right.
From Logan Airport all the way to downtown, they shut it down. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it was a bit of a fear, and people come back and say, well, you don't know if they were the only 2, and it could have been this, and it could have been that. I'm sorry. I got a real problem with that. I just,
they searched all the houses, I remember.
Well,
yeah.
But they didn't. But they did. They asked to come in and search, and And if I'd have been one of the homeowners and told them no one was there, they weren't listening. They didn't ask. They barged in.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like something out of a third world country. If you come to my front door and say, you got anybody in there, and I say no, that's the end of the discussion, at least as far as the Constitution is concerned.
That's right.
They blew that out the door. And that's part of what this book is about. And that's just the one instance that we know of. This book, the Battlefield America, cites numerous examples of what I referred to a little earlier in the preamble as, no-knock warrants. And the police just barge in the middle of the night. And there's just story after story, example after example of wrong address, wrong people, and invariably the inhabitants get killed before anybody can sort it out. I mean, think about it. Think about this. You're laying in your bed at 2:30 or 3 or 3:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden somebody comes blowing through the door. If you're armed, if you have a sidearm near you, if you sleep, close enough with something close enough to defend yourself.
You mean like Texas style?
Yeah. Like what's going to be your first reaction? You're going to reach for that gun, and you're going to get shot reaching for it. And I don't mean just with a BB gun.
No, probably like an AK-47.
Multiple, overwhelming force. Take no prisoners type attitude. And what's even scarier is in approximately 90% of the cases, the police are exonerated. There is a logical reason for the events as they went down, and it's so sorry.
They're CYA.
So the courts protect the police. Don't misunderstand what I'm telling you. Please listen to this part. I'm a huge fan of the police. I'm a huge fan of the military, and I'm a huge fan of the police. I try to be as cooperative and as nice and respectful as I can at all times, whether I meet them on the street or whether I call them because I need their assistance or whether they pulled me over for something in the traffic. I'm good with that. But, guys, and it's up to us, the citizens, to keep moving that attitude forward and not let them drift off into things like Ferguson, Missouri, things like the Boston Bombers. It's up to us to try to keep that from happening, or when it does, get it back on an even keel. And it's happening everywhere. It's a really, really thought-provoking good book. And then it goes from this police state into the surveillance state. That's where it'll make your blood chill with not only what they're doing, but the direction that it's taking. And as lawyers refer to it, the slippery slope that it has created in terms of getting our civil liberties back. He makes a very strong case for the fact that although we think we are living in freedom, nowhere close. Nowhere close.
Well, like I've commented before, like whenever we're out, I'm just thinking I'm on camera somewhere.
Yep.
So that's why, I be wanting to put my makeup on all the time.
It's not true. So, but you are on camera. You can count on it. Which, okay, I can hear my mother. If you're not doing anything wrong, you don't have anything to worry about. All right? I just channeled my mom for you.
Well, that's part true, but then at the same time, what right do they have to be doing it too?
That's the issue.
Yeah.
And that used to be the same pushback on my mother. So they have no right to watch over me until after I do something wrong.
Innocent till proven guilty.
All right. So Mr. Whitehead makes the case that there are so many laws on the books now that every single American breaks at least 3 laws a day. That there are so many laws, federal, state, local laws about that supposedly govern our behavior and how we are supposed to conduct ourselves, that we break a minimum of 3 laws per day. Now that is scary. And that, to me, is believable. I have long said, I always get a little kind of a tingle down my spine when you ask a candidate for office what he's going to do. And invariably they come around to the fact that they're running for Congress, or they're running for city council, or they're whatever they're running for. One of their concepts is that they're going to make law, that they're going to make laws that are going to help us. They're going to do this, and they're going to make a law, and they're going to... Dad, burn it. I don't want them to make law. I want them to get rid of law. That's what freedom and civil liberties are about, is when you make a law, you're asking someone, or you're telling someone how to conduct their life, and you're creating a penalty if they don't conform. Not if they, I don't like to say if they break the law. You're creating a penalty if they do not conform to your way of life, to the way of life of the city councilman who pushed it through. And I would submit to you, 8 out of 10 times, these laws actually are created by a minority voice against the majority. You follow me? Because they're created to protect this little minority voice. And when I say little, if you've ever been to some of these rallies or anything where these minorities are speaking out, they are loud, long, and ugly.
That's you.
It is just plain revolting the way they try to shout down a logical voice, and how ugly they can get trying to get their way. You're seeing it now in the Antifa riots. You're seeing it now in the people that are against Trump. They're a minority. Anyway, we're getting off of the book. The book goes into, it's got 2 sections on the surveillance state, and you will be absolutely flabbergasted at the extent to which it openly operates and monitors what we do, what we say, where we are, who we're connected with, and they keep all of this in a database. I don't condone it. I can't for the life of me see the added value that it has created to the safety of Americans. It hasn't. It's about control. Uncle Bocce talks about the founding fathers and the people that were in this country, and how much they put up with, and what they had to do in terms of the tyrannical government coming out of Great Britain. And I am constantly making the comparison between Great Britain and Washington, D.C. And this is all filtering down from the federal level. This is all about control. The TSA is not about making you safer, never has been. It's about controlling. It's about controlling their environment in and around the airports. I mean, I don't think a TSA agent knows how to make you safer.
No, they know how to give you hard time sometimes.
Yeah. And the book also references one of my favorite phrases, which was the old Nazi phrase. How many times, when you've read something, heard something, or seen a movie about the Nazi regime and what went on in Germany when they rose to power and took over, most of these people expressed the fact that they were just doing their job. They were they were completely disconnected from the reality, the lack of morality, that they were expressing as they just did their jobs.
The atrocities. That
They were
caused.
zombies.
Yeah.
They weren't thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I would submit to you, there's way too much of that going on in our authorities, in the persons who are in authority right now. And the challenge is that I saw after reading the book, and that I'm going to challenge Mr. Whitehead when I talk to him. Okay, I got it. You're right. I'm convinced. And I'm going to tell him next week that I told you guys last week, which would be this week. Did you follow that? This would be right now, that I informed you of the book, and I gave you an opportunity to at least skim it before he's on next week. But I'm going to challenge him with the fact of, what are we going to do about it? How do we do something about it? What can we do? And if you've listened to this show at all, you'll know most every guest I have on, that's one of my challenges I put in front of them. Tell me and the audience what to do about the problem. You've just given me 15 to 20 minutes of the problem. I get it. We're in. What do we do about it? And there's a very little bit of that in the close of this book, but not enough. Not enough hardcore, actionable items. I hinted at one earlier in the conversation. And so, and the hint was, change the culture. Change the relationship between the citizens and your local police. And that's what this thing is all about. It's Battlefield America, and because if you'll recall in the Constitution, we are not allowed to have a standing army in the United States. We're not allowed to direct our own armies on action against American citizens. Mm-hmm. That's forbidden by the Constitution. Our standing army is to protect us from others. Mm-hmm. Right?
Foreign and domestic.
Well,
right.
Mm-hmm. But now, thanks to the most recent regime and prior to Trump and activities that have gone on, we basically have a standing army, and it's called your local police force. And that's how they're equipped, that's how they're trained, and in all too many cases, that's how they are beginning to act. And it's going to be up to each and every citizen to turn that around, to get them back to being humans again, and I don't mean that every one of them are that way, because that's not the case. And I don't know a lot of police officers. I know a couple. I know a few, and they're very, very good people. Mm-hmm. But when the action is on, when something is going down, when one of them has been hurt, it's a whole different ballgame. They go into a whole different mode, mm-hmm. and no one is to be trusted. That's dangerous. Mm-hmm. That's very dangerous, because the slightest little thing can set it off. And it just never used to be that way. I know it didn't used to be that way. So, I mean, my workaround or my thing to do is every time I see one, I shake their hand just like I shake somebody in the military and thank them for their service. Mm-hmm. I let them know that I'm happy to have their back. And I don't know whether but if all of us do that, if a lot of us do that, it could start to have an impact. That's the only thing that I know to do. They're not going to listen to one-up reason because they're too set in their ways right now. But mm-hmm. It's a huge, huge, huge problem. And it goes all the way from SWAT teams that protect high schools and junior highs through the local police, through universities, through mm-hmm. the local police. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you do something wrong in downtown San Antonio, you're liable to have 5 to 6 different police, in quotation marks, standing over you, mm-hmm. right then and there. There will be San Antonio police. There will be park police. There will be 2 or 3 universities represented.
That's what we saw that one night.
I know.
I think it was.
I know.
Yeah.
They're all in. They all want
Yep.
in on the action.
Yep.
You know, it's an adrenaline thing. It's a I was already convinced before I ever read the book that this was the case. But the book documents what I felt on a nationwide basis. You know, gives chapter and verse and instance and example of exactly what I felt like I had been seeing for the last 5 to 10 years. And it's that the beat cop has gone away. I mean, there's just all sorts of changes. And the police department is the chief of police in every major metropolitan area is more than happy to explain to you and to me why that has happened. It's very logical in their mind. It's been so creeping and so slow and so I can't think of the word, but you know, it's crept up on them, and they don't even realize how they've changed. I was having a conversation today with a businessman, and the one thing that I learned about government when I was in political science, and I've watched it ever since then, which has been 40 years, government is about incremental change. Incremental, tiny, infinitesimal change, but change nonetheless. Constantly moving the subjects of the government in a particular direction. Britain tried it with our founding fathers. Washington is doing it with us and has been doing it with us since the 1960s or the late 50s. Whenever it was that Dwight David Eisenhower warned us of this thing we today call the deep state. So, it starts just like preventing it starts. It starts with your local government and your local police department. That's another thing that I took out of this book. It's unbelievable what they've done, what the feds have done to convert local police into arms of their desire, what they're trying to do with the country. And these guys can't even step back long enough to think about it. They just, you know, it just a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. Here, look, we got these free bulletproof vests for you. Oh, cool. Thank you so much. Hey, look at this, man. I got a neat camera. You can wear this camera. Oh, cool. Let me try that. New guns, new toys, new men, you know, new little trinkets and stuff constantly coming along. And then they get a new vehicle to go to work in. Oh, that's wonderful. Then all of a sudden the SWAT team is given this thing called an MRAP, which is a military vehicle that can withstand a landmine. When was the last time a landmine went off on a college campus, for Christ's sake?
I haven't heard of one.
I don't ever. The only time anything like that happens is when the police did it. Sorry. Because they have the overpowering force. It's a it's a good book. It will get you going and absolutely get you to thinking. And I can guarantee you we will have a good conversation with Mr. Whitehead next week. We will be prepared for it. I'm not sure exactly how to do a segue into current events. It seems rather anticlimactic at this point to talk about Russian intervention in the elections or Donald Trump's latest tweet. I think it's hilarious that he's driving them nuts with those tweets. I mean, it's. I'm getting a kick out of it, just not only from a content perspective, but just the fact that he's beyond their reach. Mm-hmm. When I'm referring they as the deep state and the media, all which are one and the same. He's beyond their reach. They can't control him, and it's driving them absolutely crazy. and as a result, he's controlling them and controlling their narrative with his tweets. He's making them talk about it.
And then he's doing the other thing.
And he's doing.
Yeah, that's pretty smart. I like that.
Hold on a minute. Don't take off yet. Okay, now I've put a couple of tweets out. Let's go. And he flies over to France to go celebrate with his new buddy, the I don't know what he is, Prime Minister or President of France.
President
I don't know what they're
Macron.
Macron or whatever it is. Anyway,
And Mrs. Macron.
okay. So I can't easily make the shift into current events. How do we do that? I haven't even been paying any attention. When I get absorbed in a book, I'm like Uncle Bocce. I go into a different world. And by the way, the one that I read right before this, which we did not review, is Trump's Big Agenda. All right, and it's by David Horowitz. I know I mentioned it on the air. That's another fabulous one that you need to get a hold of, and that's a very, very, very fast read. You can sit down and knock that one out in about 2 or 3 days. This Battlefield America is a little bit more challenging simply because there's just so much data in it. There's so much information in it that it's not more difficult to read. There's just more to absorb. You know, it's got facts, figures, information, and I have a tendency to put little marks on the edge of the book so I can refer back to it as if I was doing a research project, because I never know when I might be doing a research project.
That's right. It could happen any moment.
Yep. So I say that I am ready to dive in. Mm-hmm. So we've got a few minutes here. Let's talk about what's going to be coming up. We're going to have Mr. Whitehead on the show. What if we got anybody else scheduled out there that we're?
I'm trying.
I'm trying. Okay. The whole idea is to bring interesting subjects and interesting topics to you, and maybe occasionally get a row out of you, if you will, or make you think to the point of making you a bit angry, or I may come on and be angry and just take it out on whoever's out there. That's sometimes just the way that it works. There's not any great big holidays coming up. We just had July the 4th.
Next one is Labor Day, but you know what that's going to be.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got a family event going on Labor Day, which is a very, very big occasion. And might get a chance to report on it after the fact. I'm not going to put it out on the air right now, but
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it ought to be a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. So join us next week. This has been part 1 of a 2-part series about the book called Battlefield America, The War on the American People. Next week we will have the author on, a gentleman by the name of John Whitehead. I am guarantee you will enjoy the conversation, and I also guarantee you will enjoy reading the book. So, hang in there, be tough. Uncle Bocce will be back. Have no fear. Well, the threesome will be put together again very, very soon.
Bocce needed a break. I hope you're having fun, Bocce.
Yeah, he's having so much fun, he's not even listening.
Yeah.
He'll come back and say, okay, what happened? We've seen how he is multiple times.
Yeah, that's true.
He says vacation. It's with a capital V.
He is gone.
Yep, he is
untouchable.
Gone. Hit the button.
That's right. He is gone.
Front row. Time to go. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Now go out there this week and take care, pay attention, and God bless.
Bye-bye, folks. God bless.